Hi everyone. This is the viruses lab lecture. So in this lab, you're going to look at the Epstein-barr virus, which causes mononucleosis disease, and we will talk about that. And we're going to do just a quick background about viruses. So viruses are not cells. So they're not made up of eukaryotic cells. They're not made up of prokaryotic cells. So we say that they're acellular. And remember, when you put the prefix a before any word, it means not. So we say that viruses are acellular infectious agents. We don't say they're infectious organisms or infectious microorganisms because they're not alive. So we call them infectious agents. When you look at the structure of viruses, they are made up of a protein coat, which we call a capsid, and inside the protein coat, you have genetic material. It can either be RNA or DNA. So we have RNA viruses and we have DNA viruses. And remember, you have RNA or DNA, you have the capsid, and then you have spikes. Spikes are proteins that help the virus attach to host cells. Some viruses additionally have an envelope. An envelope is a lipid bilayer that comes outside the capsid. So you have the genetic material, the DNA or RNA, you have a capsid, and then in addition, some viruses have the envelope, which is a lipid bilayer. And the envelope, we will learn about it in the virus lecture, but sometimes it makes it easier for viruses to infect our cells because our cells have cell membrane also made up of a lipid like the envelope. And again, viruses have spikes which help it to attach to host cells. That's how they can replicate themselves. They have to infect living cells, which we call the host cells. Host cells can be any living organism. So viruses can infect anything that's living. They can infect humans, bacteria, plants, anything. And they use these host cells to make copies of themselves and go on to infect more cells. So we're going to talk about just a few beneficial aspects to viruses and then the detrimental ones. People don't typically think of viruses as beneficial, but viruses that infect bacteria, which are called bacteriophages, are very beneficial ecologically because without bacteriophages, bacteria would take over the earth, the oceans. So bacteriophages keep bacteria in check. And there's a lot of research being done on bacteriophages in the human microbiome. Are they keeping the bad bacteria and the good bacteria in a balance in the human microbiome? Viruses have also passed on various genes to bacteria and humans. So a lot of bacteria have changed properties and gained genes that benefit them as bacteria from different viruses. They don't necessarily benefit us. A lot of times they make the bacteria more pathogenic, but for the bacteria, that's a great thing because it helps them live longer. And then humans have gained various genes from retroviruses. We'll learn about what retroviruses are later in regards to RNA and DNA. So most viruses we know of are bad, detrimental viruses. They cause infection. And what happens is viruses infect cells and they most of the time destroy the cells. And in this process, they turn on your immune system, which causes a lot of inflammation, which is the foundation of all bad diseases. Usually inflammation, too much inflammation is not a good thing. So viruses can create acute infections. Acute infections are infections that come on very rapidly and it's a short period of time. So for example, the flu, you get it from the influenza virus and you have it for maybe a week and it's gone. So it's an acute infection. Chronic infections are long-term illnesses. So they're viruses that cause infection for a long time. You can have an infection for years. Latent infections are lifelong infections that cause periodic outbreaks. So an example of a latent infection, so there's a few herpes viruses. One of the herpes viruses causes cold sores. So they're the little pimple things near your mouth. And with cold sores, actually I probably should not have touched my face with the coronavirus outbreak, but anyway, I'll wash my hands later. So with latent infections, you have an infection with a virus and you have it all the time, but every time you're immunocompromised, so if you're sick or if you're stressed, you see that virus cause the symptoms that it causes. So for example, with people who have cold sores, they'll typically tell you that they get cold sores every time they're stressed because that makes them immunocompromised. And then some viruses, unfortunately, can cause cancer. Cancer is when cells don't stop dividing. So any virus that turns on cell division causes cancer. And an example of this is the HPV or human papilloma virus that can cause cancer. So just keep in mind that most viruses are detrimental. And the virus we're going to talk about in lab, or you're going to look at in lab, is a human herpes virus 4, which is the Epstein-Barr virus, and it causes a latent infection. So the Epstein-Barr virus, also called human herpes virus 4, is a lifelong virus. So people who are infected with this virus have it all their life. It causes the disease infectious mononucleosis, which unfortunately sometimes people in high school call the kissing disease. The reason why it's been unfortunately termed that is because you get it from saliva, so you can get it from kissing, but most of the cases of people that get it did not get it from kissing. You got it from drinking from someone's straw or eating from someone's spoon who already was infected with the EBV virus. And again, the disease is caused by a virus. A lot of times it's asymptomatic, meaning you don't have symptoms, but if you do, the biggest indication of EBV is extreme fatigue, fever, sore throat, swollen lymph nodes. So fever and swollen lymph nodes we see with a lot of different diseases because your body, your immune system is trying to fight off the infectious agent. Transmission, you get it through saliva. Again, most people get it from just drinking from someone's cup or eating using someone's utensils that already had the virus. Sometimes you can get it through blood products. Treatment is rest and supportive care. You want to try to get your immune system as strong as it can so it can fight off the virus. So you do not take any antibiotics for any viral infections because antibiotics only fight bacteria, so it would be a waste. And prevention is to avoid people with it. So if you know someone has mononucleosis or has the EBV virus, which causes mononucleosis, don't drink from their cups, don't use their utensils. So here's an image of infectious mononucleosis in someone's throat. So you see a lot of pus discharge. Pus is your body's way of fighting infections, and we'll learn about that when we learn about the immune system. Here we have a microscopic image of a downy cell, and let's talk about that in the next one. So in this lab, you're going to study the EBV virus by looking at a blood smear. The reason why you cannot see the virus under your microscope in lab is because you guys use a bright field light microscope, and those microscopes are not fancy enough to see viruses. Viruses are super small, so they need transmission electron microscopes or scanning. You basically need an electron microscope. So to be able to look for evidence of the EBV virus, you look at a blood smear and you specifically look at white blood cells or lymphocytes. They mean the same thing, that look abnormal. Because a lot of times the virus can cause the cells to burst. So you look at, these are all blood smear pictures, and these are all red blood cells. But when you look at blood, there's red blood cells, there's white blood cells. There's a lot of different types of lymphocytes, which are white blood cells. Downy cells are white blood cells that look abnormal, and these indicate that this person was possibly infected with the Epstein-Barr virus. So again, downy cells are lymphocytes that look abnormal. So if you look at this one, and this one, and you compare it to a normal lymphocyte picture, you can see that they look abnormal. And this will be easier when you look at what healthy lymphocytes look like under the microscope. So you're going to look at downy cells. And for your lab practical, we want you guys to know that viruses are acellular infectious agents. They are not cells. Be able to identify a downy cell under the microscope, so know what a downy cell looks like. Again, it's a lymphocyte that looks abnormal. And for a mononucleosis. So the name of the pathogen that causes it is Epstein-Barr virus, also known as human herpes virus 4. It causes the disease infectious mononucleosis. The cause of the disease is a virus. The mode of transmission is saliva, so it's oral. And prevention methods: avoid someone who has it. So this is it for the virus lab.